And I want to review some emails. I've received a number of emails from a few of you, and I just want to put it out in the whole group, and so we have a full group discussion about that. Finish bucket 3. And then I'd like us to do a brief conversation about what our next few meetings might be focused on, because I feel like we are kind of coming closer to the home stretch and how we want to pull this together and begin to either dive a little bit deeper in some areas that we've missed, or to circle back around and connect more clearly to policy and have a final document that we present, which would be great. And then we'll talk about the next 3 dates, which I'm going to propose next 3 Thursdays, just FYI. Okay, so why don't we spend a minute or two on the minutes, review it, and see if you have any comments. I'm terrible about looking at the clock.
The buckets 1, 2, and 3 there, when we originally got started, we were using that term for having condensed 21 or whatever it was, 21 or 30 suggestions into 10 and calling those buckets. And then these presentation 1, 2, and 3 might be less confusing because we ended up redefining buckets as the combination of the previous buckets.
Yeah, that's true. So you propose that it should be called something else?
I don't know, presentations perhaps, or
1, 2, and 3 presentations?
Because we had basically divided the overall task force into 3 groups that we'd call group 1, group 2, group 3.
Right.
And then, because I remember last week you said bucket 3 presentation, and I'm saying, that scratch my head.
Okay. So we need to relabel that, is what you're saying, or just clarify our language?
We want to clarify it.
Group 3.
Probably people who are coming from here on out aren't going to care much, but it was confusing. If they go back and read the original, the first minutes, it's confusing.
Okay, so noted. We'll use groups. Any other comments about the minutes that you see? I know that you had comments.
Yeah, I hadn't read through this whole thing actually until after the meeting last week, so behind the times. And the only piece in here I object to is really the thing about charter schools. It's item 15.
I'm not a fan of charter schools either, but
Let's take a look at that. Is it number 15 or 16?
I know. 15.
yeah, right, yeah.
Will negotiate with new charter schools to encourage them to be. The way I read that, and I could be wrong, and maybe we want to clarify the language, is that we're not encouraging charter schools, but we're just saying, gee, in order to not exacerbate the problem, if you guys do charters, you should aim to make them neighborhood charters rather than full city, but maybe you have an issue with that, or maybe people had a different interpretation of that.
I know you're right. I don't think it's going to happen. The charter schools are going to. It limits their business. And
Well, not only that, but the law requires that they be selected by lottery. And I don't think they can limit their geographic scope.
I mean, I think they can, but they won't. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if they agreed to that, because they're a business. They want to fill those seats, and they don't want to limit their catchment area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing that had prompted me to put that in is when talked to Tom Felton, who's heading up the proposed Rochester Stream Charter Academy. He was listing some of the things that they were trying to incorporate, which sounded like a lot of the things that we all talk about, you know, trying to make sure you got parent involvement and so forth. And I had suggested to him, you know, one of the things that we think is one of the big problems is that parents can't be involved if they live on the other side of the city. If you guys really are interested in having a problem-free charter school, or at least not exacerbate the problems you're going to have keeping parents involved, have it be a neighborhood charter school so that they can walk to the school if they need to, because it doesn't help us any if their parents, you know, stop being participants and then the kids get booted out and back into the public schools with more problems than they had when they went to the charter to begin with. So anyways, that was why I had suggested neighborhood to them. And if we're, you know, there are, the thing that came up as we were talking about the problems with going back to neighborhood schools, even in the original proposal for the choice policy, they were saying that there aren't enough schools in some areas to cover all the students in that neighborhood. So if we can urge them to fill some of the holes we've got, then we're helping everybody.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. It does seem like a little bit beyond the scope of this,
Yeah.
though, so maybe,
Yeah, I think it's beyond the scope.
yeah.
And I just don't like encouraging charter schools, period. So it's my own.
Under any
personal-
condition.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just won't enter that dogfight then.
No argument from me.
Yeah. It would be.
Okay, so we'll X out 15, I guess. Any other comments about the minutes? Okay, well, if you come up with some other comments, we can circle back to it. So a few emails that I got. Dan, did you send me an email about some data?
I think this week I didn't send you any emails.
Okay. All right, so I wanted to cover your email about the number 15, and you had a question about the numbering of the bucket, or calling it groups instead of buckets. Megan had sent in an email wanting to talk about the integration, social integration, wondering if we could address that. And we started to comment on that, but since she's not here, we can sort of put that to the side. But it's maybe we can have a discussion about it at some point. She's very interested in talking with the Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty Group and also the GS for Great Schools for All folks.
And they have an update coming up.
Yeah, press release is coming out.
No, but I mean,
Session.
Great Schools for All is going to have an event where they're going to update people on their what they've achieved, accomplished, and what they're recommending. And I think it's soon. No, it's next week.
So if you find it, you can give us that
Yeah,
date.
I'll let you know.
And maybe some of us can commit to attending some of those meetings.
Yeah, I was looking at the,
It's in the 9th.
The 9th.
The 9th at 7 o'clock at Third Presbyterian Church on East Avenue. Well,
Okay.
Meg's in East Avenue.
GS. Okay, great. I think those cover the emails I got. Why don't we dive into finishing up Group 3's presentation, and then if there's time, we'll decide about where we want to go next, whether we want to circle back
leave
around
it to you to
Group
make
1,
sure
2,
we're.
and 3,
Okay.
or to set up some different kinds of work groups. Okay?
Okay.
You guys take it from
Yeah, we had, just to recap a little bit for our new member here, we had talked about various ways of improving the schools, and one of them is to try to get back to neighborhood schools or community schools. And that's helpful, but it still requires that we change some of the components in the schools to make them better in drawing parents and parent involvement in the schools and improving their performance. And we've pretty much talked several times about the building a successful urban education system through realignment of accountability to the community, which was a proposal Ralph Spezio put together back in 2012, and which draws on the experience he had at School 17 when that was turned around. So what I was doing in this proposal was primarily trying to think of how can we take that and make it, how do we introduce it into the schools in a way that's going to be functional. And yesterday I was at a meeting of AQE Metro Justice, and they were talking about the discipline policy, which they're hoping will be approved by the board towards the end of the month here. And one of the big concerns is getting all the support services in place so that this change in policy is not going to leave a lot of teachers high and dry, that they don't have the means to cope with some of the problem kids. And it really struck me as I was listening to all those concerns how much that overlaps with what we're talking about doing in terms of community schools, because we need to do a lot of the same things to make the community schools functional. And it's perhaps good timing that we're talking about, trying to get back to neighborhood schools, because there are going to be a lot of common efforts, I think, between what we're talking about and what we're going to have to do anyways if we make the code of conduct change functional. So one of the things we need to do, I think most of the people, a lot of people in the community are in favor of seeing us get back to neighborhood schools. Or at least a lot of the people I've talked to, I say, why did we ever get away from it? But we have to somehow make sure that as we launch this, that the community realizes we mean it, that we're not just blowing smoke like we have so many times before when some new fad comes in and we're going to change everything this way and that way and don't do it. Yes.
Do all of you individuals live within the city?
Yes, I live in 19th Ward.
Okay.
19th Ward.
I live in the city, yeah.
Okay. And within your zone of where you live, those are the individuals that you spoke with about neighborhood schools, or have you visited each zone and quad to establish a range of information regarding this?
My background is I've been, since they talked about closing School 16 on Post Avenue, I've been working with the Southwest County Council Education Committee and with John's 19th Ward Schools Committee, and I think most everybody involved with those groups is talking about neighborhood schools.
Because my concern is, well, I worked in the 19th Ward, used to work out of St. Mary's from Hillside, and the incident that just happened on Franz Avenue, there's a school right around there. So when you're considering to state that you're going to introduce a neighborhood school, my question is, have you spoken to the people who live in that neighborhood and why they chose not to endorse that school for their own child? Therefore, the implications of poverty, the implications of crime. A lot of people might be considered walkers. They don't want their child having to walk to school.
Yeah, we've actually discussed all of these things, and it's in the meetings. These are great points, and everybody's really concerned about the unsafe neighborhoods and why parents send the kids further away, and then the cost of the transportation, and the schools are just the
So
same.
before you implement something, you have to answer the question.
That's precisely what I'm trying to get at here, that we need to make sure that as we talk about making these changes, that parents understand, what we've looked at, and the biggest thing that parents have said as to why they choose a school is they can get busing there, you know, and they may think it's better than the school next door. They may not think it's better than the school next door, but their child can go on a bus in front of the house and go to that school. We've been pushing for several years now to try to get the busing formula changed so that you could get on a bus to go 3 blocks to the local school, which would, in many cases, I think, prompt parents to go back to the neighborhood school rather than, for safety's sake, putting their kid on a bus to go across town. But
But I think before implementing, there'd be either a survey of people or certainly communication to people who say, here's what we're trying to do. Here's the pieces of it. That'll take a while.
Well,
Of course,
I don't want to force people to go to the neighborhood school, and I don't think we can do that.
no, I don't think.
And at the
I
same
think-
time, generations have changed. Back in the 1980s, well, I'm young, I understand, but I was able to walk to school in the 1990s in kindergarten. That's not so now, because society has changed as a whole, and cultural values have also adapted and changed as a whole. So what I don't want to do is subject people to an idealized neighborhood school based on what used to work back in
Yeah,
the
and
1950s.
that's what.
I mean, it's not just walking or not walking. I think that there are huge differences between the schools today in terms of income, race, test scores, general atmosphere, and I think telling people you can't go, like, you keep out if you don't live in a park area. It's not going to be
When you get a
acceptable.
chance,
And
read this. My email's at
I
the top.
go,
Thank you.
you know, my kids do go to their neighborhood school and they do walk, and I think that's great, but it's also important to me that it's a diverse school, and if we went to strict neighborhood boundaries, that wouldn't be the case. And I think that it's also just not, people will not accept that. It's gonna, if that's our recommendation, then people are gonna be very upset.
And what we're proposing here is not that, we will replace choice with you're going to go to your neighborhood school. It's that we have, through the busing reimbursement issue and through just the placement office perhaps kind of doing whatever is easiest, and if there's a lot of open spots in this school over here, why not put some kids over there if they haven't specified some preference?
Well, it says here, choice of other schools will be permitted on a case-by-case basis, which sounds like you are forcing people to go to the neighborhood school. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
needs to be, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what
Yeah, maybe
case-by-case
the
basis,
wording
but I
needs
think
to be
that
changed, but.
What number is that?
10,
10,
no, 11.
11.
So, I mean, I think that what we could do that people would probably be happy with is give every school a boundary, give every address a designated neighborhood school, give every family a priority at some school, which they don't have currently. And then people would be, they'd be getting something they don't have now in many cases rather than getting something taken away.
Sorry to cut you off, but regarding the walking and not walking, I think that's the least of our problems. As you were saying, your kids to go to their neighborhood school, and they enjoy that school. But there's some neighborhoods that, regardless if that child has to walk or take the bus, or if that parent gets them there and drives them there, we have to think about the school atmosphere, which where the code of conduct comes into play, and restorative justice. And people, you have to think, why doesn't that person or that parent want to send their child to that school? And it might have nothing to do with transportation, and it could have everything to do with that environment is not sustainable enough for the growth of their child.
There are going to be some cases where that child has some enemies at that school. You know, some kids that they don't get along with, and it might be a very good reason to pick something that's further away.
That shouldn't have to be an issue. I mean, it's normal, but to me, what I'm saying is that when I think of a neighborhood school, I think of a neighborhood, a hub, which neighborhood school and community schools, in definition, are two different things, although they have a lot of similarities. And to me, I live in a neighborhood, but I don't live in a neighborhood. I live on a street that has houses on it but we are no longer a society where we're out having a block party with our neighbors and everyone knows the individuals who are in that neighborhood. A lot of these communities have rental properties where you have families that are in and out, so it's unsustainable of having that neighborhood where it's a community effort to support that school. That's what I'm asking, if you look at the systematic values of those areas.
Willa, did you have something you wanted to
Well, I want to add to the conversation, the No Child Left Behind Act mandated that we offer the option for families that who would ordinarily be assigned by whatever means to a school that is listed as needs improvement or whatever the nomenclature is today. The law required that the parent either be allowed an opportunity to gain entry into a school in good standing or be provided with supplemental educational services. Now, we could talk about the merits of that, but the fact is that this federal legislation, when it was reauthorized, did not take that out. So, in effect, the school choice system that we have, if I could editorialize for a minute, the reason that the administration embraced the choice program is because NCLB passed that year. And the administration said, how are we going to comply with NCLB? And the answer was right there in front of them, the school choice plan. The administration had been dragging its feet for a year after the board had had its discussions. And they only just decided it was the right thing to do when NCLB came along. And those components haven't just been dismantled.
I mean, I think even if No
You
Child Left
can't-
Behind didn't exist, just given the neighborhoods in Rochester and disparities between neighborhoods in Rochester, I mean, it's not fair to go to a strict neighborhood boundary system.
Yeah, I think the sense is that we're not trying to do an either or, like go back to an old, the old way. My sense is that, first it was strict. You go to your neighborhood schools. There were these old neighborhoods where people were all kind of knew each other, and then there was huge variation depending on economics, and kids had different opportunities or lack of opportunities. Then we went the other way, saying you can go anywhere, and then that while that provided some opportunity, it also kind of disintegrated the city neighborhoods in some ways. So I think we're sort of inching our way towards some place in the middle where we don't take away choice, and there is some opportunity for integrating kids across boundaries, but not too far. But then you also encourage folks to know about schools in their own zone, so that there can be more neighborhood building up and neighborhoods where people know each other.
That's exactly what I want to do. But I think we need to be specific about what is the placement policy going to be exactly.
I think you're right. Placement is one of the biggest
Bugaboos.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah, when School 16 was being closed on Post Avenue, I did some canvassing in the streets there, trying to get supports for people, getting upset about it, because tendency was they didn't even know it had been closed unless their child happened to go there. And across the street and a short block away from School 16, I ran into one father who had just moved there a few weeks earlier because his child was going to be going to School 16, and this was just perfect for him. He'd be able to walk them over in 5 minutes, and now the school was going to be over on Scioto Street on the other side of the city. One of the things, I'm with the 19th Ward Community Association, and we do a lot of stuff trying to build up community. And one of the things that we run into is, there's a lot more rental properties these days than there used to be. And with the city choice system being the way it is, really what you do when you look at, okay, I'm here, and my child is going to school here where I need to move because the ceiling's falling down. Well, I can move anywhere a mile and a half away from that school he's going to and be sure that he's going to be able to continue going there. Whereas if you've got most of the kids by choice going to their neighborhood school, the renter looks around in the area where they are rather than it doesn't matter because my child's going to be getting bused to school anyways. It gives some glue to the community, which helps everybody, because you certainly would like to have rentals that are more stable if you're trying to build up the community spirit.
Do a time check, it's 5 o'clock.
Okay.
We have 15 minutes left.
Yeah, in putting this together, I think, one of the things we'll need to do is to put together whatever we come up with here into some orchestrated TED Talks so that people can go on the city or on the school district website and get a concise explanation of what is being planned so that they understand what is being done. And as we formulate this, it would be good to be in touch even before everything is gelled to talk with some of the folks in the news media. Certainly if you look at the articles that were in the paper just recently, there are a lot of people there who have talked to a lot of folks, and getting their input would be helpful. And also if they buy into whatever we end up with, you've got some powerful allies in terms of helping spread the word and make the transition successful. And I think that we're looking at primarily growing out the switch back to neighborhood schools rather than saying that, okay, all the kids are going to switch schools, because if they've been at a school that's a mile and a half away from where they are for the past 4 years, they're going to want to probably finish there.
Have you, not just thinking about the students, because students are very important, and so is a parent's choice. I'm also thinking about the individuals and administrators in that building, in the buildings, in these neighborhoods. From experience, there are some schools out there, quite a few, that actually are run based on the dominance of the administration. And so therefore, a lot of times, like you have here on number 8, that counseling groups to work with PTO, PTA groups, connecting with parents. We have come to experience that a lot of individuals, a lot of administration, a lot of schools actually don't want real parent engagement. So when you say that you're going to get parents involved and you say that you want our support, then you have to be ready for what you ask for. And therefore, we have to make sure that this is something that the Parent Advisory Council does, of the Sanctioned District Council for Parents. We keep track to make sure that there is a functioning PTO and a PTA and a school-based planning team in each school. Some of the things that we have noticed is that these PTOs and PTAs and school-based planning teams, therefore, sometimes are admitted to functioning, but at the diligence of the dominance of the administration. Therefore, it's being run upside down. So
In fact, if you read Ralph's paper,
Erica, read. So the school-based planning team is, in my opinion, is almost an insult. It on paper it may be run properly. It rarely is. Okay?
Absolutely.
And there really, in most schools, there really is no mechanism for parents to reach out to their constituency.
That's what the school planning team is for.
Right. And but teachers do have that opportunity. In my paper, I go way beyond that, and I have shared governance, and it's a mechanism that's it's an infrastructure that's built. In essence, it flips everything on its head. So the school is run by the principal and the community leader.
What about the parents?
Oh, the parents are there.
Because
So the community.
to me, the school-based planning team is really right now the only voice that parents have in a
Yeah,
school.
never read my paper, and then.
Which I will read your paper, but from experience, from you to say that it's an insult to have a school-based planning team, as a parent, sometimes that's my only hope to
Well,
get my voice
what,
heard.
what I'm saying is this, is that many times the administration will jam their agenda down the throats of everybody, okay? And so that has to be neutralized. And one way to do that is shared governance.
Okay.
And that gives the power, really the power of selection. What are the community's expectations for the school? I'll tell you, I'll guarantee you, they're in alignment with the districts and with the states, maybe in different language, okay? Based upon those expectations, how is that administration and principal meeting those expectations? So the community needs to pick your principal based on those expectations. And if,
Do you define what your definition of community is in here?
I
Everyone's definition is
get
different.
close to it, yeah.
'Cause that's my fear, is that you're saying community and principal governance, which doesn't include, to me, a voice of the parent, which is already dumbed down, because we are the last to know and the first to be blamed in
Well,
any situation that goes on with our
The
children.
whole paper is designed to put everything on its head and get the power where it belongs, and that's with the parents and the community. So I may be missing a few things in there that you know, that's not.
When I read it, I thought community meant parents. I
Well,
don't know if,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, and
Like, everyone's definition
Yeah.
is different.
I don't remember
But-
if it said
but-
that, but.
But Erica, in
You
policy,
took it
I can see your detail oriented, and that's good. Look at the general policy. It's designed to neutralize what's happening now, okay? There are very few principals that really listen very carefully to their parent and resident constituency, very few of them. And that's not because there's many things involved with that. There has to be a better system. I'm trying to look for it there. So that's why I put my email at the top.
Absolutely, and I would definitely go.
And I'm really interested in your thoughts.
Sorry if I've already heard this, but
Oh, that's okay.
to say if I'm going to be here.
I'm glad that
For
you're here
parents.
because your voice is very much what is needed on this group.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's going to
Common
affect
criteria
us.
and a glossary of different words that accomplish the goal of the criteria. Because the bottom line is the kid.
Right.
It's the child. And you get one shot. And you go to the next year, No child left behind is slips.
And that's my biggest concern, is that we are working with a system with a lot of individuals who, you know, still have children in the district very early, may not have children in the district anymore. And we have to find a way to combine those two, because like I said, times have changed, culture has things have changed.
Even if we go with a magic wand here, if we go back to a neighborhood or community neighborhood school, that does not guarantee. There were plenty of principals, when we had neighborhood schools, there were plenty of principals that operated their school in the vacuum and didn't pay attention at all. It locked out the parents and residents. So just because we go back to a configuration of neighborhood schools, that does not mean, even if we do beacon schools, I said that last week, I can make it look as a beacon principal that I have all these wonderful partnerships, I have all these links to the community, I have all these things happening, and they'll say he's a wonderful beacon school principal. No, I may be locking out the parents and the residents and making decisions on my own. There's no mechanism in the beacon schools that guarantee that the parents and residents are going to have an equal say in how their school is being run. So that's the whole intent there.
We also have to give parents the opportunity to receive the power to feel as if they have that choice.
There it is in the
to
paper.
voice.
That's in the paper.
Because there is a very damaged relationship between parents and the district, and it's been a very abusive relationship between parents and the
Yeah,
district,
yeah.
and that communication is lacking. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I think that, myself, I had kids at school, 7, and she went through 3rd grade there, then went into the MAP program over at School 50, and then my son, he started over at School 19 and took the bus there. I was living in the northwest at that time, so I've seen several schools, and then they ended up going to Wilson when I was living in the 19th Ward. and I was involved with, school involvement in all of these schools. So I know that sometimes parent involvement, is either encouraged or only in name only, but is really not welcome. So I know what you're talking about. And right now, we've been trying to fight to get 16 back, and to get it back in the type of school that Ralph had over at 17 when he was doing that in the 90s, where you had community involvement, and real community involvement.
So let me touch base here. Looking at the time again, any last sort of major points or comments about this proposal before we transition to?
Well, I think we need to try to, find ways to give parents as many reasons to be part of the PTO as possible. And if we can get the city and county to provide certain services through the PTO, so a parent needs a job, or they're looking for housing in the area so they don't have to move outside, they're too far away from the school, to have some support services aimed at supporting parents, or if they need some retraining for a new job, it'd be good to have those things in the school to at least be able to refer them. Certainly once you've got more children going to their local school, then you can start looking at a walking school bus for safety, which right now I've been involved with some of the stuff that has been done in the district, and so few kids from the local school go to the local school that you try to come up with a walking school bus route, and there aren't many children on that route. Hopefully, for some of the schools, in fact, one of the maps that John had there, School 10 in the 19th Ward is a citywide draw school. But if we were morphing back to neighborhood schools, eventually that school or something else in that area would be necessary to cover all the children that live in that neighborhood. So we will need to think about perhaps morphing some of these citywide draw to either zone draw, which they were supposed to be in the first place, or even community draw.
Is that the Congress Avenue location?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
former
But it's
37.
been used for SALT 14. Everybody's been using that as the flow through from rehabs for various schools.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm.
no,
No?
no.
Well,
It's a school that's in there now as a school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
No,
as,
it's been a school, but you've had,
Yeah, there was training
Various
facilities
numbers.
there at various
right,
times.
it used to be 37.
yeah.
Right.
You were 11, 14 when 14 came out of 58.
No, that happened at the same, okay. School 37 closed. The intention was it was going to be closed for good.
But it didn't.
Okay. But before it was taken out of the inventory, the whole facilities modernization thing did up, but it was never used for swing space. When the World of Inquiry proposed its expansion, taking over the whole building,
Right.
that did displace the school 14 students.
Yes.
And the answer that was proposed was that all of the school 14 students would be the first generation of school 10 students, okay?
New population.
Right, well, I sort of like instant school
Transition.
instead of phasing in and building from scratch. So you're kind of right, but it was really it went from 37 to administrative to school 10, and it hasn't been used as swing space.
So do we have any comments about Group 3's proposal before we transition to the next bit?
And one of the things we were hoping to do was have somebody from the city here, but we haven't yet. Because I think we really need to start working on that to get their participation in this.
He's supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, Jeremy or Alan?
Alan and Jeremy was supposed to pick someone else to accompany him.
Oh,
I'm gonna email him when I get home.
okay. Well, okay. We might be able to invite them another day. So,
Mhm.
so why don't we then think about our next few meetings, okay? And what folks would like to do. So we have 3 proposals. We've had a good amount of discussion. I don't know if we want to circle back around and pick up some more comments or thoughts about group 1, 2, and 3, since we've each had a deeper time for discussing, or if we want to ask for some more data, or if we want to invite some experts to come in or some guests to come in, or if we want to set up some working groups to kind of bring it back together as one document and connect it specifically with the policy, the old policy. There's a bunch of ideas I just threw in there.
Have we gotten any new data on the busing costs for
I
schools?
have a bunch of data. We just haven't had a chance to go through the data because we've been
Mhm.
spending all the time on proposals. But we have, when you sent this list of things out, and we have another set of data, and then we have a summary of, we have actually a bunch of data here. If we want to spend a little bit of time looking at this next time, or even glancing at it right now.
I think that's a good idea. One of the things that we often forget is that there are so many cities that are comparable to Rochester, and they're going through many of the same things.
Mhm.
And I know just vaguely, I don't trust myself to even, it's vague, and I'd like to know more. I'd like to know what Boston did. Boston went back to,
I can tell you what they did.
Did you look at
They
those?
have a system where it's not a strict neighborhood system, so there's a lottery. Every family is given a list of 10 schools they can choose from before the lottery, and it's generated by a computer, and it's guaranteed to include the school that's closest to their house. It's also guaranteed to include some school with good test scores, basically, however they put that. And then there's a lottery.
so they refined it. They narrowed it and refined it.
It's what Michael Alves refers to as a zoneless choice. It's sort of the next generation of managed choice. Now, Willie, Dr. Charles Willie and Michael Alves were the folks that we consulted with managed choice. They got essentially built their reputation on what happened in Boston, and they're pretty much the foremost experts on what has happened throughout, with choice throughout, and including this migration into the next generation, which is called zoneless choice.
As far as what we do, I think, why don't we just put it together and make some kind of report? So I think,
Combining the 3 groups' proposals?
yeah, or I think that, well, 2 things. First of all, I think we can't really hash out all the details in this group anyway. All we can do is
Right, it's too big.
make a recommendation to the board, and also, personally, I'm not going to be here after September 1st or September through December, so I'd kind of like to just finish.
Yeah. What's up? You're moving out of town?
No, well, I'm going on sabbatical, so I'm going to be away for 4 months.
Okay. Well, we hope to get this put together well before September.
Well, but there's not that many weeks left before September. I mean, we've already had.
Why
8 or
don't
10 meetings, so.
the presenters of each of the groups put together a composite from their perspective, and then we could, maybe then those people can get together and come up with a common composite, because we're not going to do the common composite in the whole group easily.
Well, maybe they should all just be put into one document for starters,
Yeah.
and then we could all kind of, we could put it up on a Google,
Yeah.
as a Google document, right? And then just kind of make comments on it and move things around. Is that wild and crazy?
And at the same time, it may be helpful concurrently to put the example that was just mentioned in other cities that have struggled with this and the types of things that they've resolved, that where they found their problems, where they found success, how do parents feel and residents, how has it affected the neighborhoods, property values, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
That may help with the policymaker's decision as how they craft this.
Comparisons.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the data? Because we've asked some questions and we've received some data from the folks
No.
here, and we haven't had a chance to discuss it in here. Do we want to spend some time
Sure.
here looking? Like, so what if we do this? It's 20 past now. We'll put all 3 proposals into one Google document, right? And then we'll share it with everybody in this group. And then we can just start talking to each other on that. And then we'll come back and meet. And do we want to talk about this composite document on Google first? Or do we want to, shift and look at data? And then
Let's look at
decide.
data for a while, because that might say what you want to put in the document.
Okay.
Yeah.
And give us more time to read it.
Mhm.
Read it
Yeah.
Data would
documents.
be better, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the next question is, so I have some I'm going to share, and we'll provide interpretations, and we can have a good discussion of that next meeting. Is there other specific data that we have questions about that we could get by next meeting? So what do we have here? Can you explain what you got here?
Sure, it's for every school, how many kids go to that school, and how many kids live in the traditional zone for that school and are enrolled in some RCSD school. So it's basically saying, if everyone went to the school that they're zoned for according to the traditional zones, would the schools be full or empty?
Okay. And then this one is a chart that says where students live versus where they go to school.
Yep.
Okay, some numbers there.
Has that been updated? That looks like one that was around
Can
a
you
couple
read?
of
I
years
have my
ago.
glasses on me. Can you read the tiny print at the top? Maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
bigger.
get my magnifying glass.
Oh.
Right, try that one.
I think it
Very
was
tiny.
2014.
This is as of October 2015.
Oh, 2015.
And then this.
Oh, so that was Bed's Day this academic year.
And then this is a question that you all had a few weeks ago, and I got an answer. It says, this current analysis compares the following 2 groups of students who are currently enrolled in RCSD in terms of their school year attendance and NWEA/MAP performances. So they were looking at how they performed versus where they go to school. So there's a lot of stuff to look at here. I don't want to pass this out because then we may not come back. Why don't we save all this stuff for next time? We'll go through the data, and if there's anything else you would like, I can make requests.
Well, I talked to placement about what happens with the phone call.
Yes, you did a walkthrough, or?
Well, the interesting is the phone call tells you to come in for an interview. So what happens here then is more important.
Do you want to pass that out so we can look at it over the week? And then
If you bring back, sure.
we'll
Just
just
put it on online.
Put it on
so-
Google Docs, so
Yeah.
just we have it in front of us next
Yeah,
week,
sure.
right?
Um,
Unless we need more copies.
This type of map, which shows the distribution of kids relative to the schools, do we have any, this goes back 10 years, do we have anything more recent that we could,
Explain what that is again, and I'll
well, this was showing the catchment areas for the various schools as defined. This goes back 10 years. This is just a small piece of a citywide map that was in a,
catchment areas for the school zones, was it, or school?
Well, if you're talking about the boundaries, they have
not necessarily the boundaries, but how much of the numbers changed in the past 10 years.
Well, that's that.
Okay.
Piece of paper.
Okay.
It's all same thing.
Oh, we're going, okay, this
Is it different?
So we'll have a discussion about it. We'll interpret the data. You can have a chance to read it, and then we'll come back and explain it and discuss it further in the next meeting.
I'm going to do a national search.
How is it?
I'm going to try to do a national search.
Okay. For other cities that have done something like that. Perfect.
I've
Okay.
had it, she's had it, so it's.
Okay, so it looks like we have a plan. And our next 3 meetings,
These are extras.
I'm going to suggest, oh, thank you. I'm going to suggest the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd. Those are all Thursdays at 4:30. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Did you get the others too? Yes.
These are extras.